Hello everyone. Hello everyone. Hello everyone. Hello everyone. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of the Real Talk. And we have a fantastic show tonight. We're going to be diving into the classic horror movie, Scream. You know Scream. You know that movie. But before we dive into the show, please go to all of our social media pages. That is the Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. The Other People Show. And this is going to be a fun one, because this would have to be one of my favorite horror movies. I'm not going to deny, I'm not going to lie, and I'm sure you all have probably seen this movie, at least heard of this movie and the franchise, which is actually still going strong to this very day. So we've got director Wes Craven leading the way. He's the director of Scream 1, 2, 3, and 4, Red Eye, The People Under the Stairs, A Nightmare on Elm Street, the original The Hills Have Eyes, and countless others. But he was hitting a little bit of a slump during this period, so he really needed Scream as much as I think Scream needed him. Basically, the plot of this movie is a year after the murder of her mother. A teenage girl, Sydney, is terrorized by a masked killer that targets her and her friends. And that's the basic premise of the movie Scream. I just really like this song. I think it's fitting. 100% fitting. So yes, I was relishing in the musical instrumentation of the soundtrack of Scream, Red Right Hand. But yeah. So this movie came out back in 1996. It came out in December of 1996. And basically, up until this point, the horror movie as a genre, in the eyes of Hollywood and the mainstream public, was virtually DOA, dead on arrival. Financially, straight to video or early DVD sales and releases and rentals were primarily the audience members when it came to horror films, as there were only not that many released in the year of Scream. Which this movie came out in 1996. And in 1996, there weren't a lot of horror movies that were being released in 1996. I think we had the Peter Weller movie Screamers. We had Dark Souls. But we really didn't have that many horror movies of the mainstream Hollywood back in 1996. If you go back and you look on IMDb or you do any kind of research. Because you had a lot of direct-to-DVD things like The Faces of Death 2000, that was in 96. The Amityville Horror Dollhouse, that was in 96. Angel of Darkness 3, everyone remembers that gem, correct? So there weren't really a lot of mainstream. Bad Moon. I think there was a Halloween, maybe part 6, released in 1995. And nothing really of the slasher kind that was mainstream. But Scream changed all of that. Scream, and I know you've heard it, if you've heard of the horror movies, if you keep up with it at all, you know that Scream did revitalize the complete and utter genre 100%. And the reason that it is still popular to this day, partly, is due to this movie. Because I have to say, I did go. I was 16 years old in 1996. And like I spoke about many times before, I had Entertainment Weekly. And as stated in the title of the magazine, it came out weekly. And Scream was highlighted in the December releases. So I went down to Coburn Movie Theater. It was in Coburn. There was a movie theater there for all the youngsters. It was a 3-screen cinema. Scream opened up in the small cinema. It was the furthest one to the right when you would walk in, the smallest cinema, the smallest amount of seats inside. I went to the first showing on that Friday, which was a matinee, at 4:45 or 5 p.m., and there was only a handful of people in that first showing. And I only say that to say that when Scream opened up with $6 million. Which is kind of in line with what a lot of the horror movies at that time were opening up to. They would open up to 5 to 7 million, drop off halfway the second release, and end up, eking out 15 to 16 million, and then doubling that on home video and DVD release. The Scream, however, started small, and it built and continued to build and continued to build, like There's Something About Mary did 2 years later. How City of Angels did, how a lot of these kind of titles did back in the day, before internet was letting all the reviews out right away. But the word of mouth would build, and which would increase the audience. You've got to go see this new movie. It's this new horror movie called Scream. It's directed by Wes Craven, and it's got a fantastic cast. There were a lot of up-and-comers in this cast. And really, like a lot of horror movies today, a lot of unknowns, because you had a couple of people that had been in a few things, but not any huge stars of the silver screen. You have Neve Campbell, which she was in Party of Five. She played Sidney Prescott. Courtney Cox, was probably the biggest name on the cast, which was the biggest cast member. But you have to also think at this point that she was probably cast in 1995. Well, she was cast in 95. And Friends was a huge blockbuster gargantuan show, which is true. But in 1996, this film shot in 1995, Friends was only in its first season. By the time Scream was released, Friends was only in its second season. You've got David Arquette as Dewey, Deputy Dewey. Skeet Ulrich. Now, he had been in a few little small things, but this was his breakout as Billy Loomis, which is kind of a nod to Dr. Loomis from Halloween. Rose McGowan as Tatum. Matthew Lillard as Stu, and Jamie Kennedy as Randy. I have met at least once, I think just once, a cast member from Scream. Later on, I will tell you which cast member. But before we do that, let's get into a few little facts. So here are a few little facts of Scream. Matthew Lillard was cast as Stu after accompanying his girlfriend to another audition. A casting director saw him and said, "Hey, why don't you come in here? We're auditioning for this movie called Scary Movie. Come audition, Matthew." Matthew Lillard auditioned and got the part of Stu. Courtney Cox persuaded the character of Gale Weathers because she wanted to play a bitch after playing the nice Monica on Friends. She wanted to play this hard-nosed, hardcore reporter, all business, no nonsense, hard-edged biatch named Gale Weathers. She auditioned, won the part, and she has been in, I think she's been in every Scream movie that's been made and produced. The use of the caller ID increased. It increased, just like my voice did. You hear the inflection? Increased. Just like the caller ID did after the release of the movie. So there used to be caller ID, which would be what we all have on our phones now. The phone calls, you see the number. Who is this? Oh, I know. Let me answer. I don't know who it is. Let me not answer. But it used to be a separate device. Everything used to be a separate device. Now it's all on the phone. But everything used to be an individual separate device. Digital camera, phone, calculator. Now you can watch movies on the phone. So that, gets rid of the DVD player, the VCR, the 8-track. Or not 8-track, Betamax. Excuse me. But yeah, Courtney Cox pursued the character of Monica, and the use of the caller ID increased after the release of the movie Scream in 1996. Jamie Kennedy was cast as Randy because he would improv humor into some of the dialogue, which made director Wes Craven laugh. Now, a funny fact about Jamie Kennedy, this is a side fact, is that he auditioned for Scream with pink hair. And if you're wondering, why did he have pink hair? Because if you go back and you watch the Leonardo DiCaprio, Claire Danes, William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, Jamie Kennedy, I can't recall who he plays right away, but he does play one of the characters in Romeo and Juliet. And it's Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. So he just had come from an audition. He went back and forth, and he did a couple different auditions. And I think he had pink hair each time. I think he does. So, where was I? Yeah, so he got that, and he was a virtual unknown because he had done... Now, I did read his, and I'll go ahead and tell who it is now. I have met Jamie Kennedy. I went through a little bit of a Jamie Kennedy phase, probably in the late 2000s, maybe early 2010s, where he was doing some stand-up. I saw his stand-up a couple times. Met him, I think just one time, maybe twice. But when I did meet him, which was a funny thing, he was dating Jennifer Love Hewitt at the time because they were on the show Ghost Whisperer together. They were dating as well. And she was working the merchandise table. But they call it merch, the merch table. But I was kind of a little bit nervous and intimidated, and she was actually really stunning that I neglected, and I was just fearful and didn't ask to get a picture. I did get to talk to her, and she was stunning. And surprisingly, really sweet and nice. I think we went back and forth about some shirt sizes. I was going to get a shirt that didn't have a size that would fit me, so I don't think I think I bought a DVD. I think I bought a DVD of Jamie Kennedy's stand-up. But anyway, I digress. Henry Winkler makes an appearance as the school principal. So when he opens the closet, a little scene inside his office, there's a black leather jacket from Happy Days that he wore as Fonzie, Arthur Fonzarelli, and it's hanging up inside. It's a little bit of an Easter egg. So next time you go in and watch, just keep an eye open, keep an eye out, and just watch to see if you can see that black leather jacket, and you'll be like, oh, Adam from he from that show, Adam from the show said that it was in there, and it's a cool little thing. And I made a little bit of a mention of it earlier. The original title of Scream was Scary Movie, but the notoriously awful Weinsteins made a good choice for once when they were like, Scary Movie sounds too much like a comedy, like a funny movie. Let's switch the name of this to Scream, and let's give Scary Movie to another movie, which they did, Dimension Films, which produced Scream, also produced Scary Movie a couple of years, 4 years later, with the title Scary Movie. So let's get on with the show, and let's talk a little bit about the budget of the show, of the movie. Listen to this 90s music. I didn't really care for that song. It didn't really seem to fit with the motif. But you've got a budget of $14 million, which was pretty much the standard budget of a scary movie back in that time. Even today, you can make a very sufficient scary movie for $5 to $10 million. Even the new Halloweens that were produced the last couple of years only cost $20. So this is a very reasonable budget. And with every regard, they probably made this with the thought this would probably make 15 to 20 mil in the theaters, maybe 40 worldwide, recoup the budget, but make back the profit on home video and, selling to cable and all that kind of stuff. But surprise, surprise, Scream, like I said, built and had momentum and made $103 million on a $14 million budget. It made $173 million worldwide, had a Rotten Tomatoes score of 81%, audience score of 80%, and IMDb score now, Internet Movie Database, at 7.4. So all very high scores, especially for a horror movie, because typically these things don't happen. And I think it's where Scream was like kind of meta, with kind of a movie talking about a movie, referencing other horror movies within the film, was a brand new concept at the time. And other than maybe like New Nightmare, which was also directed by Wes Craven, hadn't really been done a lot, as far as I can think of right off the top of my head. But it's something that screenwriter Kevin Williamson, who was the writer, and he also wrote I Know What You Did Last Summer, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, Scream 2, Scream 3, Teaching Mrs. Tingle, which was called, at the time, Killing Mrs. Tingle. So, I think he also worked on Dawson's Creek as well, so he had a tie-in to, like, the Carolinas. But yeah, this was a very popular franchise then. Well, even more so now than then, to be honest with you. Because I remember going and watching it, like I said, and a friend of mine went with me. A few weeks later, like I've mentioned before, I would often see movies on my own, by myself. But I liked this movie well enough that I went back and I saw it a second time. And, I told people about it as well. And it does feel kind of good knowing that, you were kind of on the front lines or the forefront of a lot of these type films, because you got to see it grow. You weren't really told, oh, there's this cool movie that you have to check out. You were the one telling the people there's this cool movie that you have to check out. And that's been the case a lot of times. And it's a cool feeling knowing that you've kind of gifted in a loose sense of the word a recommendation. You're gifting a recommendation. But like I said, let's get into the plot of the movie Scream. It's pretty much self-explanatory. A year after the murder of her mother, Sidney Prescott, she's the teenage girl, is terrorized by a masked killer known as Ghostface, and he begins to target her and her friends on this Halloween party. I think the party takes place at Randy's house. Or maybe it's Stu's house. I think it's Stu's house, actually. Stu or Billy. I think it's Stu. So basically, these kids, a high school, you've got like a group of like 6 or 7 teenagers. And like I said, all new, fresh faces. But they're quirky. They have a knowledge about them that some of the teenagers beforehand didn't seem to have. That they have the knowledge that these horror movies exist. And they acknowledge these within the movie. They acknowledge, they're watching Halloween in a scene. And they're acknowledging the rules how to survive a horror movie because there is a killer on the loose. Things not to say. Randy does this little, I'll be back and I'll be right back and these type things. So it's very meta in the sense that it's very self-aware that they're going to be repeating the things that happens within the film. There's one scene where Sydney says that she doesn't like movies like this, like horror movies, because there's always some dumb girl, some big-breasted girl that should be going at the front door instead of running up the stairs. Later on, it foreshadows where she locks the door because the killer says he's outside, turns around, he's inside, she's unable to go outside because she just locked the door, so she has to run up the steps. So it's very meta in that way, which I do appreciate, and which is one of the reasons it was so popular then and has endured since 1996. And if you think about that, this movie is 28 years old. But other than maybe some of the fashion, which actually seems to be coming back into style, but other than some of there's even the cell phones in this movie, but other than some of the technology and things of that nature, maybe the music, this movie still holds up. The story still holds up. And it's still easily accessible. And it's a formula of its own. Scream is now its own entity. Whereas before, it was kind of a, something that was put into the category, another entry into the category of the horror genre. And now Scream is basically a, monumental establishment of itself. Because Ghostface is on shirts, merchandise, keychains. You can go to the Scarefest in Lexington, horror cons all over. So this is a major thing now that wasn't quite as mainstream in the 90s as it's grown into in the decades since. The characters, like I've said, we've got all. They're very. I would say I would go as far to say superb. Neve Campbell, she does a fantastic job as Sydney. I never did watch Party of Five, and I've never seen her other than Three to Tango. Never seen her in another film other than the Scream movies and Three to Tango. So in my mind, she is Sidney Prescott and Neve Campbell. And more so Sydney because I've never really seen many interviews with her or know anything about her life personally. Courtney Cox, now she did fight off the stigma of being Monica Geller. But in her career has been diverse enough since Friends that she might always be known as just Monica, but she could equally be known as Gail. And she does a great job, and she breaks the stereotype. In Scream 3, her hairstyle and a little bit of plastic surgery is atrocious, as Scream 3 and 4 are the weakest entries in the franchise. 1, 2, the most recent, and 3 being the next, I guess. You've got Skeet Ulrich. Now, he was set up to be the next it guy. The industry thought that he was going to probably follow in the footsteps of what a Johnny Depp turned out to be. Johnny Depp was in A Nightmare on Elm Street, Skeet Ulrich in Scream, 14 years later. But his career didn't really pan out that way. He had As Good as It Gets, Chill Factor. He did a show called Jericho and a few other things now and again. And I think he's kind of like settled in to a TV actor. But he does a really good job here. Drew Barrymore, obviously, probably the biggest name. I misspoke earlier. I said Courtney Cox. Probably Drew Barrymore at the time. She was kind of like the Janet Leigh of this group. And her character, Casey, gets killed off in the first scene, letting the audience know you don't know who's going to die. You don't know what to expect from this film. Rose McGowan, she does a great job as Tatum. And Matthew Lillard and Jamie Kennedy fill out their roles solidly and respectively. The favorite scene, least favorite scene in the movie. Now, this is going to be a tough one. I would say the opening scene I truly, truly like, which I do. It gets you right off the bat. It lets you know that this is a different kind of horror movie because they're talking about Friday the 13th. They're talking about other movies. They're talking about the movie that you're watching. They're basically talking about those movies in this movie. And so I do love the first opening scene. However, Drew Barrymore's hairstyle has always bothered me in that scene. And I've never been a fan of Drew Barrymore. I've never thought she's a good actress. Now, she does a good job in this role. But I never thought that she did that good as an actress. And I've never really like her and Jamie Foxx are in the same category to me. I don't dislike them, but I've never really liked them. I've been kind of lukewarm on both of their positions. Jamie Kennedy, Jamie Foxx, I wanted his character in Collateral with Tom Cruise to not be the survivor. I wanted Tom Cruise to Vincent to take him out. But I digress. My favorite scene, the scene, I don't really know. I rewatched this again this morning, probably about 12:31 a.m. So I did watch it on Friday, June 28th. Again, I probably have seen Scream. I would guess. I would say I've seen Scream at least 10 times. Probably 10 to 12 times. Maybe 14 times. I watch it, maybe 20 times. But anyway, I've seen it quite a few times. And, one of the scenes that I always like to go back to is pick out, it's kind of a whodunit killer movie. Because it's not really a serial killer because it takes place in just one night. Well, pretty much 2 nights, I guess you could say. A weekend, a Friday and Saturday, or Thursday and Friday. But one of my favorite scenes has to be, I do like the scene where they're inside the video store. One, because it's nostalgic, because Randy works inside of a video store. And 2, because it kind of sets off that Randy is telling Stu, well, maybe Billy is the killer, as Billy walks in there. And then I was wondering if that's the way Wes Craven wanted the character Billy to be like shown. Because I always assumed, to be honest with you, from the very beginning, that Billy was the killer. I don't recall thinking that I thought there were 2 killers, Stu being the other. Now, going back, you can watch it throughout and easily put it together. But at the time that I first saw it, I do think Billy. But I'm wondering if that's intentional to point the focus on him, because they do try to hover and linger on a few characters a few seconds longer to plant doubt in the audience's mind. They linger on the principal. They linger on the sheriff. They linger on Sidney's dad. So they linger on Billy. He has that kind of menacing, troubled look. So they kind of point. They're trying to get you to think multiple different ways. Who could it be? So it's a nice little whodunit story mystery woven into this killer aspect involving these teens from, what's the town called? Woodsboro. Score. Well, I didn't say least favorite scene. I don't really have a least favorite scene in this film. I really don't. I think they just do a good job. There's not really a weak scene in this movie. It is an almost perfect horror movie. And let's get to the score. This is Don't Fear the Reaper by Gus. And this song is played. Now, I referenced this a couple of shows back incorrectly. The wrong song. But this song is when Billy is first sneaking into Sydney's bedroom through the window. And it's very subtle, kind of like it is now. Don't fear the Reaper. We'll be able to fly. Don't fear the Reaper. Baby, I'm your man. So yeah, it has a good soundtrack. We opened up with Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, Red Right Hand. And there's a lot of there's a lot of 90s songs on this soundtrack and score as well. So it does kind of have that nostalgic feel, but then there's some songs just like the one I played that kind of could be any time, which is kind of like when I direct something or when I create a project or a movie, short film, unless specifically wanting to have the audience think about a certain time period, I want the music to seem non-year. It could be any time. And that's kind of how some of the songs are on the soundtrack, and some do have that 90s feel. Like this is Moby. Very 90s, right? So yeah, I think it has a pretty decent soundtrack. I think a lot of horror movies do have good soundtracks though. So I can't really argue with that. But this one does have that kind of 90s feel to it. And I think if you know the 90s culture, this kind of fits in with close your eyes and just think for a moment. This is 90s. Now, originality. Now, this movie is a slasher film, yes. But the way it's told, in the way that the characters' dialogue are with one another, is very unique. And it was very unique, especially for this period of time. Now, it's become more of a thing of the present. Yeah, it's very original. Especially for 1996. And you go back and you watch the horror movies pre-1996. And then, not that they're not to be appreciated, because they are. But then you watch the ones post-1996. And you can see the influence. The poster. There's one poster, it's just a close-up. I've never really been 100% sure who the poster is supposed to be. It's just a close-up of the eyes, nose, hand over the mouth. But they also released a second one, the same poster, the face slightly lightened with the four main cast below. But the picture of Drew Barrymore in that poster never even looked like her. So I never really liked... Now, the poster that I posted on the Facebook page, I really did like. That had Ghostface with a bloodied knife. The tagline, "It's always someone you know." And then "Don't see it alone," alone in red. And it's kind of also like his hand has the knife, but it's overlapping where the titles are for, it says Scream and Dimension Films. It's almost like he's coming out of the poster. And that's one of my favorite posters as far as the Scream movies go. But the original, now I don't know if this was an original. I never saw this poster until today, to be honest. But if it's original, it does hit the spot. Would I recommend Scream or no? I think you know the answer to that. There's a reason the Scream is a classic and regarded as a classic movie. It hits all the elements, especially for those seeking this type of film, where you want to get behind it. Whenever I watch a slasher, subconsciously, I'm wanting the characters to be familiar. I'm wanting the characters to have that's something that you can't put your finger on. And this cast of characters and this group of actors and actresses exhibited and oozed that. And this is a fantastic ensemble that I honestly don't know can be matched or has been matched with an ensemble in a horror movie. Has there been another one where it's been matched, where the chemistry and the kills and the story, no matter how convoluted or how many years goes by, I mean, we're coming on 30 years and it's still relatively a decent story, spawning from the origins of Sidney. Now Sidney's, kinfolk. But yeah, if you haven't, by some chance, seen the movie Scream, and you like this type of movie, horror movies, give it a shot. Give it a chance. Even if it's a movie from the past and you don't like movies from the past, it doesn't seem like it's from the past. I mean, I guess in a way it does. But I still think it's worth a shot. But anyway, thank you for tuning in to another edition of Real Talk. Go to all of our social media pages. That is the Facebook, Spotify, TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram, The Other People's Show. Thank you for listening on 92.5 WLSD, WLSDradio.com, or 1220 AM. Stay tuned for an edition of The Other People's Show in just a moment.